There is an exercise called the Romanian Deadlift, and we have a lot of questions about this on the board, and I thought I'd go ahead and deal with this in a video. The RDL, as it is commonly known in the resistance training community, is a very popular exercise these days, and I think that a lot of times it is used incorrectly and its purpose is misunderstood. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the best way to use it, the best way to think about it in your training program. Romanian Deadlift was, as the story goes, and the story may be apocryphal at this point, but Nicu Vlad apparently was visiting the Olympic Training Center back in the 80s, sometime back when he was world champion in the 220-pound weight class. Nicu Vlad, very strong Romanian, taller guy, didn't carry any body fat much at all. From what I understand, was capable of a 700-pound double front squat. And Vlad was an amazing lifter. He was very, very strong. And he was a visitor at the Olympic Training Center. And he was observed one day in the training hall doing this exercise. And he was taking the bar out of the rack, lowering the bar down, heavy weight, lowering the bar down, using a stretch reflex at the bottom of the thing, not touching the floor, but coming back up, so initiating the reps from the top. And Vlad was from Romania, and nobody had ever seen this before, so it got the name Romanian Deadlift, and that's at least the story. The use of the Romanian Deadlift has expanded tremendously over the past couple of decades, since that time back in the 80s when we first saw it here. The value in the Romanian deadlift lies in the fact that it is a way to incorporate the stretch reflex into the deadlift. The deadlift normally starts on the floor from a dead stop, thus the name. Now, the fashion recently in the some of the faddish training communities is to bounce deadlift reps off the floor. We have seminars all over the country, and every time we see a big stout looking guy that can't deadlift 315 with a flat back, first question I always ask is, have you been bouncing your deadlifts? And they go, well, yeah, except the first one. And the dead giveaway on a bounce deadlift is the lack of strength in the low back. To realize the value of the deadlift, you have to pull each rep from a dead stop. And that means that the first contraction off the floor is a concentric contraction. There's really no eccentric work component in a deadlift, since normally when we get real heavy on deadlifts, we set the bar down pretty fast. It's a little eccentric work in terms of controlling the thing on the way down. But largely, the value of the deadlift lies in the fact that it starts from the hardest mechanical position that you're going to be in, when the bar's laying on the floor with 45 centimeter plates on the thing, and it's kind of a standard height in weight rooms since everybody makes plates the same height. So we generally start from that position from a dead stop and drag the bar up the legs, lock it out, and then set it down real quickly. So there's not really an eccentric component. The stretch reflex is the thing that occurs between the eccentric and the concentric phases of an exercise like a squat or a bench press that begin with an eccentric contraction, lower the weight, muscles get longer under tension, end of some sort of range of motion is reached, and then a bounce occurs off of the tight muscles. Now this reflex is composed of two things. It's composed of the contraction that is produced by the signal that the stretch reflex sends to the motor units that the things are stretched out, and it's also composed of the physical rebound properties inherent in the stretch in the viscoelastic components of the muscles and the fascia, acting as bundles that stretch out like rubber bands. So both of those things comprise the stretch reflex. The deadlift is devoid of any significant eccentric component. And when you bounce the deadlift off the floor, especially with rubber plates on a rubber platform surface, you get a significant amount of rebound. And what this generally means is you do not do a significant portion of the first couple of inches of the work of pulling the bar off the floor after the first rep that starts from the dead stop. As a result, most of the work of the set is done as a partial. And the part of the work that you have to do in terms of keeping the low back flat off the floor, which after all is the first part of any single deadlift, doesn't get done in a set of bounces. Really what happens when you bounce your deadlifts is that you are using the eccentric effect of lowering the bar quickly and catching the bounce, and using not only the stretch reflex but the rubber reacting against the floor to bounce the bar back up off the ground. A Romanian deadlift is valuable when it is used correctly. And when it is used correctly, it is back out of the rack. The rep starts at the top, so that when you go down toward the bottom, you are lengthening the posterior chain components eccentrically. You reach the end of their natural range of motion and initiate a stretch reflex up out of the bottom. This allows you to train the deadlift components in a little bit different way than would be trained off the floor. It's a completely different take on the pull, because a normal pull with a deadlift, a snatch, or a clean starts from a dead stop. As a result of this, the Romanian deadlift is not really anything like any of the other pulls because of the difference in the fact that the rep starts at the top. So it's not really a deadlift variation. It's its own exercise. And this is where some of the confusion comes from. Now, if you want to start the Romanian deadlift from a dead stop off the floor, then you're doing a stiff leg deadlift. And that's an exercise we don't really use very often, and we've decided to omit it from this series of instructional videos. But the Romanian deadlift is extremely useful in that it is a different way, a completely different way to strengthen the posterior chain than you find with any other pulling exercise. And at the same time, it allows you to strengthen the lower back, because one of the features of the Romanian deadlift is the fact that the lumbar must stay in perfect extension all the way down and all the way up. So we're going to show you how to do the RDL today. Josh Wells is going to help us here. Since the RDL starts at the top of the rep, we're going to take it out of the rack. RDL is not pulled off the floor. We take it out of the rack, we do the set, we walk it back into the rack. For that reason, we have to be careful about our distances. If we're using very heavy weights, you don't want to be walking around on the platform with 405. So you're just going to take just a half a step back out of the rack, just enough to clear the pins on this. Josh has got straps on. We're going to have him standing here while I yak and bore everybody to death with this instruction, so he's going to have to hold on to it a while. I don't want the grip to be a limiting factor in this instructional video. When you are doing RDLs, if you're using light weights, just use a double overhand grip. Use it the same way you would with your deadlift to improve grip strength. If it gets heavy, you can hook or you can strap. I would not recommend an alternate grip with this exercise because of the thing you're about to see. Okay, let's try this. Take it out of the rack. Clean whipped grip works best for most purposes. I suppose these could be done with a much wider grip, not much narrower a grip, but whatever variation you'd like to use. The whole idea here is that we're going to start the rep at the top, reach the bottom, come back up and bounce off of our natural range of motion. A little bit closer to the rack. I don't want to give anybody the wrong impression about the distance. Nice and close, just one step. When it gets real heavy, you're not going to want to walk very far. Chest is up. This is the focus of the position of the RDL. The lumbar spine has got to stay arched. And this is going to be your fight during heavy reps of an RDL, is maintaining this lumbar arch, and it requires quite a bit of attention. For our purposes, this is what makes it a low back exercise specifically, but it also ends up being extremely useful for training the posterior chain, as I mentioned earlier. Now, this thing is set. First thing to initiate the movement is unlock the knees. And you're just going to barely unlock the knees. You're not going to bend them 15 degrees. You just unlock them, and now we're going to keep them in this unlocked position just to take some tension off the hamstrings. If we do these with a completely stiff knee, it really restricts the range of motion of this exercise to a less useful depth. You'll bottom out very, very soon if you try to do these with a perfectly stiff knee. So unlock the knees. And now, what's going to happen is that Josh is going to lower the bar down his thighs. Wait, he's going to lower the bar down his thighs. What he's going to do in order to keep the bar in contact with the thighs all the way down is he's going to consciously use the lats to push the bar back. The hips go back, the bar goes back, the knees go back, even though they remain unlocked. The only thing goes forward is shoulders. Slide it down, never leaving contact with the leg. And he gets to the bottom of his range of motion, and this will increase through the set as he warms up. He will reach the bottom of his ability of his hamstrings to extend right as he feels the back start to unlock. He comes back up. Don't ever challenge that thing with depth to the extent that the low back goes into flexion, because the point of the exercise is getting good at rebounding off of the bottom with a completely locked lumbar spine. Do a couple more. Notice he's going a little bit deeper. Depth on an RDL is not the key. This is the key. Once again, he's pushing hips back. He's pushing the bar back. He's pushing his knees back, and the shoulders go forward. Another couple. Watch the movement. Most especially, watch the low back. Just exactly like that. Again, one more. And that's it. Good. Rack it. Tell you what, let's do. Let's put another 20 on each side, and I've got them right here. And let's see what it looks like with a little bit of weight, so you can see the effort involved in keeping the low back flat with a heavy weight. Now you'll notice that the weight is heavier on this. Straps become even more important in this particular video, and we will not take nearly so big a step back out of the rack. Let's do about 5 reps here. Normally we like to do RDLs in sets of 5 or 8 or 10. I don't see any point in heavy singles, doubles, or triples in an RDL, since it is an assistance exercise. As I mentioned earlier, it is not like any other pull. It doesn't simulate another pull. It allows us to use the stretch reflex with the locked lumbar spine, and that's the key. Let's do 5. Reach back. Good. Squeeze the low back. Good. Good. Tight, tight, low back, low back. Excellent. And he reaches the bottom, stretches it out, bounces back off the bottom. Last one. Tight, tight, tight. Good. And walk back in. If you're going to get hurt on an RDL, it's probably going to be in and out of the rack, so be very careful with that. This is an excellent addition to your training if you are an athlete at the correct level of training advancement. I don't believe there's any reason for a novice to do an RDL any more than there's a reason for a novice to do a barbell shrug, a heavy ballistic barbell shrug. But at a certain point in your training, these things will become a very valuable assistance exercise. Use good judgment when you do them, and remember that the value of the RDL lies in the locked lumbar spine being used with the stretch reflex out of the bottom. Thanks for watching.